Okay,
Go ahead.
my birthday is in May.
Mazel tov.
Anyway, when I did my bar mitzvah,
Yeah.
my haftarah was tochacha.
The
Now,
Chukota.
we're talking about a difference of 3 months now.
Right.
Uh,
As I mentioned before, it happens twice in the Torah. One is at the last Torah portion of the book of Leviticus, and one is now towards the end of Deuteronomy. So you probably had the last Torah portion of the Leviticus, the Chukotai. Got it. Okay. Now, I don't know your birthday, but I know around where. Okay. Text one. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Let me share the screen.
Waiting.
Say it again.
Thank you for waiting.
For waiting what?
I'm kidding. I'm 10 minutes late and you're first starting.
And you know,
We locked the door just for you.
we were talking. Okay, text one. This is from the Torah portion, and this isn't pleasant, but it says there, God will scatter, based on how we're living and our choices, God will scatter you among all the nations from one end of the earth to the other. And among those nations you will not be calm, nor will your foot find rest. There God will give you a trembling heart, dashed hopes, and a depressed soul. This is really unpleasant stuff. And your life will hang in suspense before you. You will be in fear night and day, and you will not believe in your life. In the morning you will say, if only were evening. And in the evening you will say, if only were morning. You know, it would be difficult to find equilibrium. Because of the fear in your heart you will experience, because of the sights that you will behold. So this is, the Torah talks about this terrifying vision. And it's a vision which unfortunately we've lived. Text 2, this is written by a rabbi, one of the classic commentators on the Torah, was known as Rabbi or Don. He was in Spain, he was in Portugal. Don Yitzchok ben Abarbanel. He was a very learned and wealthy and respected leader on the Iberian Peninsula. He served as treasurer to King Alfonso in Portugal. He was advisor to the King and Queen of Castile. He was treated like a rat when it came to the expulsion from Spain in 1492. He tried to save the Jews by offering his entire fortune. They just took it. And he was expelled from one country and another, and he writes about it. It's very sad, horribly sad, what he went through and what the other Jews went through. And in text 2, he writes about this. It's important to know that the curses mentioned in this Torah portion are not meant as exaggerated threats to intimidate Jews into obedience. They were in the spirit of a sacred divine prophecy foretelling the future. And he actually writes about how he saw in his life so much of what the Torah portion foretells, where he saw it in actuality, which is just a horrible idea. Now, so Jews in America, we've been living a charmed life. Even since October 7th, which has been rough, in the scope of history, we have a charmed life. May it get better, continue and get better. But the reality is, this is God's world, and Jews have had a very rough time. A lot of other people have had a rough time. We've had maybe even a rougher one. So, text 3. Let me just get this so you can see my face. Okay. I know. This is a quote from the Rebbe's father-in-law, the previous Rebbe. The time of exile is a time of concealment. It is entirely different from the era of the temple, which was filled with revelation and light. God's infinite light was bright and revealed. Our heyday, we're told, was really not the time of the temple per se, but the time of the temple when we were aligned with the temple, which is really King Solomon's time. King Solomon's time was economically, spiritually, it was just really, security-wise, it was a great time for the Jewish people. In the words of the Zohar, the moon was full every night. In other words, it was wonderful. And then the Jews, the kings, the Jewish kings fell off the wagon, all of that. But this is like the epitome of saying you were able to see God's blessing, God's grace, and God's beauty, and God's kindness every day in life. The exile, what we call the exile, which means when we tore ourselves away, and we're torn away from that reality, that's different. God conceals his face. Conceptually, in other words, when you're not, if someone is saying, I'm not going to show my love because right now the relationship doesn't deserve it, that's called concealing the face. As the passage states, hide, I will hide my face on that day, which is also in the book of Deuteronomy. Okay.
Rabbi, just a quick question or comment, though.
Sure.
There was still at that time illness, right, and death, so it's partially incrementally better, right, during the times of the.
Are you talking about in the time of the temple?
Right.
Yes, it was not the true image that we're closest we can get to the times of Messiah is what was going on in the Garden of Eden. Once that the mistake and the rupture in the Garden of Eden, humanity had been impacted. There was death. There was such a thing as illness. But within that rubric, there was the height of it was the time of the temple. Mashiach's times are going to be much more than the time of the temple, but the time of the temple is the closest we can get within, between the bookends of leaving the garden and Mashiach.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for bringing that up. Okay. Okay, so now, next one, text 4. Rashi tells us, Rashi said it's a primary commentary in the Torah. Today we're not going to be going into Rashi like we did last week, but a commentary which is a very important idea he brings, which really we could spend an entire hour on it, but we're not going to right now. He says, as the day grows dark at night and it shines again, so did God make it bright for you before and will make it bright for you again. The curses and sufferings preserve you and enable you to stand before him by cleansing you of your sins. Okay. This is a very important cardinal idea in Jewish thinking, especially when it comes to our suffering in life and even the Torah penal system. Every time, if this morning, I didn't see too many people, so this isn't true today, but if this morning I had said something disrespectful to someone, and I was joking. I hurt their feelings. I was joking. Didn't even think about it. When I'm sitting here, what I did to myself was, to use the imagery, I stained my soul. Because I used my energy that God gave me, my life. And what I did was I made a thoughtless comment that hurt someone's feelings. I may have forgotten about it. In a few months, maybe they forgot about it. But it's there. I'm carrying it with me. So if we could see our souls, we'd see a lot of bright spots, and we'd see a lot of spots that need cleansing. That's just the way it is, the human condition, because we're all making mistakes, and we're all using our soul, both for good and sometimes less than we should be. So, for example, when in the Torah penal code, what we call punishments are not meant to be, well, if I stole $1,000 from someone, then giving it back to them is I have to fill the hole I created. But aside from that, what about what I did to my soul? And in the Torah penal system, it's all about cleansing the soul. Because ultimately we want to think the long game. That is, how can I cleanse this treasure I have within me, my soul? When the soul passes on, I'm sure we've mentioned it, after 120 years, the soul passes on and they're in an existence of truth, and all of a sudden now they can see their souls, and they can see that, oh my gosh, when I was 19 years old, I made fun of some of the kids' clothing and they felt bad and I didn't even realize it. At that point, we feel the pain. We feel the pain that we caused, and we're embarrassed by it. We can't change it anymore, but our remorse we can feel, and that type of a burning shame is really, that's the Torah idea of what we might call a hell, is ideas of purging, it's cleansing. It's all about cleansing. It's not about punishing. Even God's not about punishing. What does God gain by punishing us? The idea that we cleanse our souls. And that's why the Torah says it's a maximum of 12 months to go through that idea. So the soul is cleansed on the other side. What Rashi is saying here is that our journey through history also, as painful as it is, and we didn't ask for it, and we don't want the pain, it's part of cleansing our spiritual toxins. And for us as a people, and us as individuals. So this distortion, where I project myself down to a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old place to play with a grandchild, that's obvious. It's because I'm trying to connect with them. What happens if what I say is, actually, much as I love you, I can't give you that candy, and it hurts me to do that. So I'm withholding. There, I'm not projecting. There, when I'm putting forth something that I have to put forth, even though I'm hiding the love. I'd rather give them all the candy in the world, but I can't do it right now because your mom said I can't, or because you haven't eaten dinner yet, or whatever it is. So this idea of us living through what we call the exile. The exile is this painful journey we've been on for thousands of years. This is something what Rashi tells us is that the day will shine again, and this journey is for us. It enables us to be cleaner on a spiritual level. So there is a point in all of this. As much as you can say to God, you want to cleanse me without the pain. But this is the reality that God gave us now, and that we're living through now. So now we want to drill down a little bit and understand the true reality of the pain we've been living through. Again, compare our era to the era, God forbid, of the Holocaust. Before that, we're doing well, but we still got our problems. Text 5 is from the Talmud. This quote is like this: Rabbi Chana, son of Acha, said in the name of the sages of the school of Rav, God regrets creating 4 things: the exile. But we're going to understand what God regrets is, because you regret something because you did something wrong. Is it oops? God doesn't oops. But the language that Talmud uses is regret. So God regrets 4 things: the exile. That if God regrets it, you can stop it right now. But God regrets it. God regrets the Chaldeans. The Chaldeans were people who they ended up. I guess the primary issue is that they ended up they were a tribe or a people, and they were like mercenaries of the Babylonians who destroyed the temple the first time and inflicted terrible slaughter. The hitmen were the Chaldeans. So the Chaldeans are sometimes identified with the Babylonians, but they were those troops. It's I guess somewhat like I think Russia uses Chechens. Just Bosnians. Proxies. Yes. So the exile, the Chaldeans, the Ishmaelites, which is interesting, and the evil inclination. Okay, so God regrets all those things. Now, what does this mean? Let's go to text 6, and this 6a, and this will be on page 121. Okay. This is from the Rebbe. What do you mean God regrets? What does that mean? It's a piece of Talmud mean? He says it goes without saying God doesn't regret in the literal sense, God forbid. He doesn't change his mind and rue something he did, God forbid. Rather, divine regret highlights the negativity in something he created. In other words, what the Talmud is using that language to say God created out of necessity some regrettable things. There's actually, they don't bring it here, there's a imagery that brought in the Talmud that initially, when God created the world, the sun and the moon was translucent, and therefore there was, as far as they're both considered the great luminaries. And then God minimized the moon and made it into a reflector. Now that's a big deal. That's God's bookkeeping. But the idea is that the main luminary, the sun, represents in the metaphor God. And we are the moon. That's why we have a lunar calendar, where the idea is that are just like the moon, depending on its positioning vis-a-vis the sun, either it can shed light or it can be dark, especially if that's rebirth. There's a lot of imagery in our position in the moon. Oh, excuse me, there's something going on here. Oh,
So how are you? John has another base. I'm sorry to hear that. Try booking a flight to Israel. Much difficult.
my daughter just had a girl.
Mazel tov.
Did she know? Because I saw her this morning.
That one is not that one.
Uh,
I got a few expecting them. But my daughter Rivka just had a baby girl, and Malka called me out. So she would only call me out for like
A blessing on her head.
a blessing on all our heads. Okay. So here, okay. The idea is that God creates regrettable things, and what I was talking about is that this idea back in the beginning of creation, humanity is symbolized by the moon, and it reflects God's goodness and God's greatness. But the fact is, there's the waxing and the waning, and every month, the beginning, there's a Rosh Chodesh, we call it, the beginning of the new month. There's special services, and we recognize the day. It's a mini holiday, and there, in the times of the temple, and we read it in the Torah every Rosh Chodesh, God would say, "Bring a special offering," and one of them is a sin offering. And the Talmud says, "Why does God tell us to bring a sin offering?" He tells us, "Bring a sin offering on my behalf. I am apologizing to you for creating this reality of the moon, the waxing and the waning." God, every month there's this idea we feel God's apology to us, saying, "Sorry, I had to do this." With this regrettable existence, because ultimately good comes out of it, but I understand it's painful right now. So to take that to 6b, also from the Rabbi, that God deems these things regrettable implies that their existence is not absolute. They will eventually become null and extinct. This is because God regrets them. He desires them only for what they can accomplish, but he has no inherent interest in them. And what exists? What exists is what God wants to exist. So the fact that God doesn't want evil to exist means, regrettably, he allows it to exist. But in the times of Mashiach, there's no evil.
What?
In times of Mashiach, there's no evil. Now, Mashiach came today, God willing. They're still Arabs. And why not? And maybe even there can be an organization that helps within the Arab community called Hamas. But the Hamas charter, there's no more need for that. It's gone. There's never a need for it. There's an allowance. Once that comes, how can there be existing in a godly world a philosophy bent on hatred and destruction? So the idea of Hamas's philosophy, that has a term limit to it. And we hope it will end when goodness comes to the world. Arabs, the community, it's not inherently evil. Depends what they're doing. Okay. So, are even Muslims? But okay. So text C, 7a. So let's. There's language. We had the four things in the Torah that we spoke about, in the Talmud that we spoke about, that are regrettable. The fourth one, we'll start from the end. In the future era, the last one was the evil inclination. The fact that we all have an impulse to do things, for our own self-interest and selfishly, and sometimes, walking over other people's interests. In the future era, God will bring the evil inclination and slaughter it before the righteous and the wicked. When Mashiach comes, it says, God will take away the evil inclination. Right now, we need an evil inclination because the only reason that when I do good, that it's virtuous when I do something good, is because I didn't have to do it. Right? If I have no choice but to go out and today and work in a soup kitchen, so it's like breathing, if that's what you have to, that's what you have to do. But if I have a choice to say, something, really, I'd like to spend the day at the mall, but I'm going to go help other people, and I have this pull, more a self-interest, a self-absorbed pull, and I decide to go to something, that makes it virtuous. So God, it doesn't say though God will get rid of the evil inclination. It says it will slaughter it. He will slaughter it. What does slaughter mean? Slaughter means when I take an animal, a kosher animal anyway, and I slaughter it, it loses its life, but what I do is I can ingest it, and I can use that energy for good things. Slaughtering here is meant in the Talmud, from this perspective, is meant as a language to let us know that the sense of self, in and of itself, that's not a bad thing. The fact that I have things I like to do, that's fine. If what I like to do runs counter to what I should be doing, that's the problem. What if I've trained my desire and my comfort and my joy to come from good things? Well, then, wonderful. Then I have that much more energy doing good things. So the sense of self, or the sense of ego, is not necessarily a bad thing at all. It could be a very good thing, as long as we're training it in a proper direction. And therefore, that's what it's saying. God it doesn't say God will eradicate the evil inclination, which means the sense of self. It's just going to be transformed. The sense of self will stay. Text 7b, slaughtering doesn't make the physical animal extinct. The animal in its entirety remains in existence. And as a matter of fact, our sages thought that to slaughter means to elevate it. Why? Because then I can eat it and I can use it for the energy for good things. Drawing a purchased item into our domain doesn't change the item. We bring it into the new domain as is. Similarly, God will draw the evil inclination as is into his private domain, where only he exists. In other words, when we're living in a better world, we're going to be sitting here exactly as we are now. We're going to have desires and things that gratify us, but they'll be pointed in the right direction. And when we're working on something that gratifies us, we have energy. We have our whole self into it. So it's really about, and that's a big part of Chabad thought, is about channeling our energies in a productive. When you have someone who has a lot of energy and maybe it comes across as aggressive, that's, we could say, try to get rid of it. You're not going to lobotomize them, but what you do is when you channel those talents, the aggression or the energy they have, channel it in productive. They can be a tremendous blessing to the world. And that is the idea, and we're going to get it here also. There's the idea of this energy inside of us, and sometimes it gets it has soiled clothing. The language of spirituality is that sometimes it comes across, it's channeled in the wrong direction. You wanted to ask something?
I'm just reading this text, and it seems like it's conflating three different concepts to create one.
We've been guilty of that before, but I'm not sure what you're talking about, though.
I mean, it's as though it's set up to be deliberately confusing.
Did I confuse you today?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. I'm not sure. As a success, I don't know. I hope it's not confused. I mean, the idea is, I think it's simpler than it may sound. The idea is that God gave us a world that has difficulty and has things that in a great world, they'll disappear. Then there are things in this world which they don't have to disappear. They just, the negativity part of them has to disappear. In other words, if let's say there was going to be chemo in the times of Mashiach, because there won't be, but there's not going to be illness, but it's only the healing of chemo without the devastation to the rest of the body. Chemo at its core, it's healing. Like I said before, just the people in the world who may be doing the horrible things, is it that they are fundamentally horrible, or that they're doing horrible things? Their impulse to do horrible things, that will disappear. Then they have to be guided in the right direction. So here we're talking about some things like the inclination, the impulse, my desires, because our desires are what often get us into trouble. Desires in and of themselves are not a bad thing. Just have to channel them. Desire good things.
Okay, however, desires are an abstract,
Yeah.
and eliminating a desire, fine, no problem. But when they use the word slaughter,
Yeah.
that takes it to a different level.
Well, slaughter, that's why that confuses things a little bit, but I want to try and stay away from just getting stuck in it. The idea that the Talmud uses the language of God will slaughter, not destroy or eradicate or disappear our inclination. Evil inclination means, at its core, means that this is what I want to do. Because what I want to do is always the right thing. If what I want to do is my North Star, I'm going to get myself into trouble. Because our appetites take you in the wrong place sometimes. What I should be doing should be my North Star. So we have these voices within us, and it talks about Chassidic thought. There's the godly self, which is a visionary of what needs to be done, what the world needs out of me, what I need to give to the world. And the more animal part of me is an animal's impulsive. This is what I want. It's yours, too bad. I'm going to take it anyway. So God doesn't say God will get rid of that. It says God will slaughter it. What does that mean? It means that it'll take out its life, but then you can use it and retrain it in the other direction. A person who has been extremely self-indulgent and gotten themselves into a lot of trouble is not beyond repair. They showed a lot of energy doing the wrong things, and now channel that energy into doing the right things. That's what the point here is, that there are parts of life that God doesn't have to disappear, so to speak, because it just has to be retrained. Repurposed, exactly. Did we do 7C? When we remove the soiled garments, the physical pleasures of the temporal world in which it is dressed, its evil is transformed into absolute good. It becomes just like the inclination for good. And this is a foundation of Chabad thought, that we want to look at ourselves. It's not about us, it's about our psyche, and we want to retrain the psyche. And 7D, it says, it will come to pass on that day, says the God of hosts, I will remove the spirit of impurity from the earth. Because God is getting rid of the spirit of impurity. But the animal soul, the evil inclination, isn't impurity, the evil part of that. But the drive that I have just to be retrained. Now, what about people? It says, let's say the Chaldeans, or what we said before, the Ishmaelites. Text 8 says, from the scripture, it says, for then, when Mashiach comes, I will convert the nations to a clear language, and they'll all call on the name of God to worship Him in one accord. We don't see a Mashiach. If Mashiach comes today, it's like not a bunch of people evaporate. It's now we're all of one mind. I say, oh, now I get it. Now I see the oneness we share. And of course, it's not about people disappearing, but evil disappears. That's what's important. And text 9 says, the salvation that, this is from the Medrash, the salvation that awaits us in the future will not be followed by subjugation. The passage states, Israel will be saved by God with an everlasting salvation. It will never again be ashamed or disgraced for all eternity. What the Rebbe is, this lesson is trying to point out is that in the four things that God, without getting, this could have gotten a lot more confused, but we're streamlining it here. There are four things the Talmud said that God created that are regrettable. There's the evil inclination, there's the Chaldeans, there's the Ishmaelites. All three of those don't need to be eradicated. The evil needs to be eradicated. But the exile, this idea that we're living in a warped reality, that has no saving value. It's once Mashiach comes, goodbye. And that's what we're saying. There, it's not, we have no more need for this idea of subjugation. The four things are regrettable, but one of them is regrettable in the sense where it has no value once Mashiach comes. And that is the one of the four is the idea that what we call this exile, this warped reality that we're living through every single day, and we've been doing this for thousands of years. So take a look at. So what is this saying? This is from Isaiah. Isaiah says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Present darkness and light lies. Darkness bitterness is sweet, sweetness is bitter." What was Isaiah saying? Part of what Isaiah was saying is that people say, this is life. This is the world. There is nothing on the other side of this. Look at this world. This is life. It said that what you're doing is you're looking at a distortion, you're calling it reality. Call a distortion what it is. God can do better. God is better than this. Life is better than this. We're not yet at that point where we can experience the true beauty of godliness in life, but don't give up hope. Don't see the distortion as reality. If you walk into a movie theater and you see something on the screen, understand that it's there as temporary. That's not life. Life is not the movie being projected. Here also Isaiah was saying this idea, people saying this is the new normal. Or maybe today even being able to say, well, this is just the way it is. That we have to accept it. This is what gets go on through on campus. This is what people go through walking the streets of Tel Aviv. No, we don't accept that as a normal. Life should be better. We push for it to get better. We pray for it to get better, and we do everything we can outside of prayer in real life to bring about a more messianic reality. So the reason this is here is because this isn't just an academic study. Jewish life calls on us to acknowledge reality and acknowledge the real reality and work towards the real reality. Text 10b. Judaism is a protest against the world that is in the name of the world that ought to be. To be a Jew is to seek to make a difference, to change lives for the better, to heal some of the scars of our fractured world. This is from Rabbi Sachs, and this is the idea that a Jew struggles. We have a messianic view, and we don't just settle in and say, well, life sucks. It's we want to say, what can I do to help? A doctor does it to bring healing. Anything we do in society, hopefully, is bringing help to society at some level. We're not bringing the Messianic era, but we're doing what we can to repair. And we keep an eye that don't get settled that this painful reality is all there is. We know it will get better, and we're hoping for it to get better. And that's why Mendy said that every single day we should be actively anticipating a Messianic era. Maimonides was a very rational guy. He said, but part of this, one of the 13 principles of faith is to look and recognize the reality, work to solve the pain as much as you can, recognize what you can't change, and anticipate that God will change it, and anticipate it even today. And that's why the Psalms tell us when God brings back the returnees of Zion, we'll say we were like dreamers. In other words, when we reach this messianic era is brought to the world, we're say we're like dreamers. Why? Because we were living it. What's a dream? A dream is not reality. A dream is reality in your brain at the point, but it's not. We will realize that what we saw as reality was really the tip of the iceberg. It was the teacher was giving us a metaphor, or whatever, or the movie that was playing. That the real reality is the beauty of the godliness that's just beneath the surface of the reality we see. And here, this is text 12 from the Rebbe. It says, "We must not despair, God forbid, nor have we reason to fear our exilic," from the language of exile, circumstances. We know that this is not our true reality, and that it will finally, and in fact, imminently, become null and void. In other words, the pain, the harshness, the shallowness, the evil, that is going to be gone. Not the people, the concept. This is especially true in our era, when we can already hear the footsteps of Mashiach. Our task is to hasten the end of the exile with enthusiasm by increasing the light of the world through Torah and mitzvahs. This will speed up the expulsion of the exilic darkness. This was something that it was very characteristic of the Rebbe, especially in the last 15 years of his life. Although it was always the idea of saying, remember, he came post-Holocaust. He lived through the Holocaust. He lived through communist oppression. And he was dealing with a shattered people. He came here in 1941. It was a difficult time, and he took over leadership in 1950. When even I remember, that post-Holocaust generation or the Holocaust generation. And here, I'm not saying it was specific to that, but he was hammering home the idea that there is evil in the world. There's pain and suffering in the world. That is not the reality we should satisfy ourselves with, and we should be tuned into. If there's godliness everywhere, there's goodness everywhere, and if the Torah has told us that one day this will all change, and the goodness will come to the fore, and as Maimonides says, we should anticipate it every day. Don't be oblivious to the painful reality. Work with it, but recognize that it's a distortion of reality, and maintain that hope and that optimism that it will change fundamentally for good. So now we have the key points. Number one, good things are everlasting. Bad things have no inherent reason to exist. They exist only to serve a purpose. Once that purpose is served, they will cease to exist. Number two, most things are a mix of good and bad. In the era of Mashiach, God will remove the bad, rendering them good and everlasting. Number three, the exile is entirely bad. There's nothing good. Nothing good in it. Its purpose is to cleanse our spiritual blockages and atone for our sins. Once this is achieved, the exile will disappear forever. In other words, some of the stuff, the Chaldeans, they can hang around if they're going to be helpful. But the exile, who needs it? Though bad news is constant and ubiquitous, we don't accept it as normal. It is a symptom of the exile, and we'll seize along with it. So this is this idea. I've mentioned before. I'm sure the Talmud tells us that when Jews say, they say, like we say in the Kaddish, Yehei Shmei Rabbi Mevorach, say, may God's name be glorified. At that point, it says God bows his head and says, woe is to the parent who cannot be with the children at the table, and how sad for the children they cannot be with their parents. The oneness with God is what God wants. It's what we want. We're going through this period of this exercise of separation, but we can find these moments in our lives where we feel connected. Our deepest self is called in spiritual writings as our personal Messiah, our personal Mashiach, because when it comes out, then we're our best selves, and we can feel connected and feel connected to God, feel connected to ourselves, can feel connected to others. That's a whisper of the Mashiach idea. It doesn't happen instinctively these days. Not these days, in our lives, because we're all bounced around from different things, and we all have a weaker side. But the faith and the confidence that we have in ourselves a better self, and that the world has a better core, and that we can achieve that in our own way now, but that ultimately it will all show itself. That's a foundation of Jewish thinking.
I believe Leon has a question for you.
Leon has a question for me. Did I miss something? Leon, yeah, I don't know. Let me see if there's I don't see anything on the chats. So if there are questions, yes, Jerry.
So good way to bury the lead, Rabbi. Mazel tov on the latest grandchild. Who had the baby?
Rivka.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah. So it's her third, and now it's her first girl, which makes Malky exceedingly happy. She would have loved the boy, but no, she's really happy for the girl.
That's wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah. Thank
Mazel tov.
you.
Mazel
Thank you
tov.
very much. Should only hear good news.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
I remember when they were all so young, Rabbi.
Yeah, I think
When
Malky does too.
When I see Laser on, online, I mean, I remember when they were all little kids,
Yeah, it's amazing that I'm still a little kid.
I
Right?
said to somebody yesterday, I said, there used to be a time when I knew all the names. Now, forget the names. Who belongs to who?
I still remember those. Anyway,
Thank you.
All here, good news.
Thank you.
Let's say hopefully we have some good news from Israel today. Thank you.
Sounds good, yes. So far, so good,
Let us
Rabbi.
know. Okay, if you will.
I absolutely will. Mazel tov. That's
Thank you.
great.